right, just sort of tell us your name and when you went to school here. And
Okay, I'm Noel Moss. I went to school here from January 1970 to January 1972. Came from back on the East Coast, and I went through a really nasty culture shock coming out to the Midwest for the first time, but it turned out to be a really comfortable place to be. And lived up in Steinmetz Hall for part of my first semester, and then I got shifted down to Memorial Hall, and that was January through May or June of 1970. And over the summer they told me, well, we don't want you in the dorms anymore. I guess I was a little bit too radical for them. And so I found off-campus housing, and actually ended up sharing the place with one of the girls from over at Valpo University, and we ended up getting married. But was here through 72, January 72. The one instructor here who really stood out to me was Mr. Wiggins. He really busted my chops while I was here, but I had a lot of respect for that man, and I learned a lot from him. I also remember Mr. Hall and a few of the others here. All in all, I have to say it was really a good 2 years that I spent here, and it gave me a very good foundation, technical foundation. From here I went up to Benton Harbor, Michigan in March of 72. I was chief engineer up at WSJM. I was there for about 2.5 years, and then went up to a radio station in Sault Ste. Marie up in the Upper Peninsula. It was WSOO, if I recall correctly. Rebuilt the station up there. The then current owner had purchased the place. It had been originally built in 1939. He wanted all new facilities, so we took care of that, got them going. Could only put up with the snow up there for about a year. Got a real belly full of winter up there, and took a position down in St. Louis in 1975, and we put KZK on the air there. They were playing elevator music, kind of greatest hits from the dentist office. And while I was at KZK, some of the early Altair 8800s, the early microcomputers came out, and I was interested in that, and I taught myself assembly language coding. It was my first exposure to computer systems, and I kind of got hooked on it. And after about 2 years there with that station in St. Louis, there was a startup called CashX. It was an electronic payment processor, and they were looking for somebody who had the electronics background, the communication background, who had some knowledge of working with microprocessors. So I went over and talked to him, and 7 years later, I moved on to MasterCard International, the credit card company. That was about 1984. Started out doing software development for them, and kind of worked my way up through the ranks, and ended up being manager of system software development for the computer systems that were put out all around the world for the endpoints for all the banks that issued the credit cards. From there, I took a flyer for a year with a company working with smart cards, sort of the credit cards with the chips inside them that you're just starting to see now. Back then, the technology, it was there, but none of the banks wanted to use it. None of the domestic banks wanted to use it. So after a year of working with the chip cards, that company kind of folded up since there was no domestic market. And I ended up with a firm called Stratus Technologies, based out of Boston. They manufacture some specialized computer systems, the hardware fault-tolerant computer systems. And my only time working with a vendor it was a different way of looking at things. And it took me about a year to start thinking like a vendor instead of like a customer. And it was a real eye-opener. And kind of worked my way up the ranks there from technical account manager up to today, where I'm senior professional services consultant, one of a handful of guys they use to send into customers around the world that are having trouble with their systems. We go in there, do a lot of troubleshooting, a lot of special project work for them. So last 12 years, been doing a lot of work down in Brazil, a couple months a year down there, do a lot of work over in Turkey, down in South Africa and India, places like that. But I got to say, if it wasn't for the foundation here at Valpo Tech, I don't know what I'd be doing now. Driving taxi for all I know. So glad I spent the time here.
Thank you very much.
Okay.